Hey, and welcome to another 31 Days of Horror 2015 segment, Toronto After Dark Edition. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about a little film called The Hexecutioners. This film is actually the third film from director Jesse Thomas Cook to have ever played the Toronto After Dark Film Festival, which is a new record. No director previously had done 3 films and had them shown at the festival, so that's kind of cool. If you don't know who he is the man who directed such films as Septic Man, Scarce did not play at the Toronto After Dark Film Festival, but Monster Brawl did. Ooh. It's written by Tony Burgess, who has done several films via the group that Jesse Thomas Cook is involved in, and he's written, I think he wrote Septic Man. He wrote a film in last year's Toronto After Dark Film Festival called Hellmouth. He wrote the film Ejecta. Trying to think. Done a couple of others, but the one that you're mostly going to know his writing from is Pontypool. That is right, he's the man behind Pontypool. In terms of actors in this film, essentially there's 2 female leads. One is a young redhead by the name of Liv Collins, who I don't believe has really been in anything before, so she's a newcomer. And the other one was Sarah Power, who has done a little bit of acting in the past. She was in American Pie Presents Beta House, Saw 5, and Repo the Genetic Opera, along with a bunch of television roles and other small bit parts here and there. Canadian, whatever's been shot up here, she's had jumped into there, right? Like an episode of Lost Girl and such. And actually, in terms of acting, Tony Burgess also has a role in the film, but I won't tell you which one it is. And as far as I could tell, I believe there's a cameo from Bruce McDonald. You have to keep your eye open. I'm pretty sure it was him when I saw him on screen. So, yeah. What is The Hexecutioners about? Well, it's a ghost story. Essentially, it's a world where they've legalized euthanasia, and it's okay to do as long as you are a authorized company, essentially. There are companies out there who have been dealt the task of dealing with euthanasia. I guess they don't do it in hospitals and stuff like that. They're separate companies, entities, and they're for profit who deal with euthanasia and such. That being said, there are obviously some political messages revolving around euthanasia and mercy killings and such in the film, but they're mostly at the beginning, not so much near the end, middle to end. But there is moments of that in the film. And in this film, the character played by Liv, she's brand new. So on her first, I think it was her first job, things went a little bad. And so she's a little shaken up. So the owner of the company decides, I'm going to send you with a veteran. I've got a job that will take you 3 days. You'll be out in the country. The guy's really, really rich, so you'll enjoy. He has a big house. You'll be able to enjoy the countryside and such. And this veteran will be able to teach you the ropes. That veteran is obviously the character played by Sarah Power. 2 very different characters. Liv's character is very meek, and soft, easily scared, where Sarah Powers' character is the strong. I've been doing this, knows what she's doing. She will still get scared, but it's only if it's really, she doesn't scare easily. And so they get to this house, and in the house is two characters. One is the dying person, and the other one is the groundskeeper of sorts, who is looking after his master. And while they're there, some weird things start happening. There's some ghosts and such, and the film plays out in a way that can only be called, I call it I'll describe it as being Tony Burgess-esque. Tony has a tendency to go on sort of like these tangents. It's in his writing, it's in his thought process, when he talks, he just has this, these moments where he'll go off. And it's clear that there are moments in this film where that happens. One thing, if you've ever seen a Q&A or been to a film or had a conversation with Tony, a lot of times when he has these stories, he seems to have this idea in this world that he's created in his head, and he'll have backstories and all this kind of stuff for characters, but then when he's putting things into the story or the movie or the script or whatever, the novella or the book, the novel, sometimes he doesn't always put that information in there, and he still assumes that you as the viewer know, even though it's only up in his upstairs in his head. And there are lots, quite a few moments in this film where you're like, who is that character? What is that? What does that have to do with anything? Why is this going on? And, as Tony would say, don't ask me that question. I'm not going to tell you. I may write it down in another movie or in another, novella or novel or something like that, and maybe then you'll find out the whole backstory or what that had anything to do with anything. And so when those moments happen in any film that he's involved in, it can get a little sidetracked and a little confusing. Luckily, because Jesse has worked with Tony before, he was able to rein him in a little bit more this time than he has in the past, or in any of the other films that Tony has worked with this particular group of director-producers. And that being said, there was an actual clear path that was visible through this film. There are still, like I said, there's still moments of characters that show up with no reason. Who are they? Nobody knows. Why are they there? Nobody knows. No explanation. Do they need to be there? No. But it's almost like Jesse saying, no, we won't put this. No, we can't do that. No, that doesn't make any sense. We'll leave that out. Had to give Tony some, throw him a few bones. So he left him a few things where it's like, oh, yes, that has no real relation to this story, but it doesn't really take away from it either. It kind of makes for a cool moment. We'll leave that in. Those type of things where it's not so distracting as to make the viewer completely dislike the film or get so confused that they give up on it. Because the film still has a set direction and it still goes down its path, and these offshoots they're just like when you're watching any movie, and you'll see a little, bits of dialogue and stuff that have real, they're usually the kind of stuff that you find on the cutting room floor because they have no impact on the actual story that's going on in the film itself. But they're often left in. And sometimes they're left in there because, there are moments that were in the film previously or later on that they related to, but you know, they were cut out. I don't think that's the case in this film. I think they were just, you know, you had to give it some runtime, so they were left in, and they were, like I said, they weren't a real detriment to the film, to the point where it made it unwatchable. It just made you scratch your head a few times going, okay, so I've just watched this entire film, and that character that was introduced, you know, what was their bearing on it? What did they have to do with this story? And the answer is nothing. But yeah, the story, there's a, you know, a seedy past with this house and the house owner and the ghosts and such. It has a few scary moments, some jump scares and such like that, but overall I wouldn't say it's too scary. The location is great. The acting for the most part is good. Yeah, I would have to say this is my favorite Jesse Cook film to date. I don't think that's a hard thing, but I do think that you can see his progression as a director and a filmmaker. And I honestly, after seeing this, before I would be like, whatever, it's a Jesse Thomas Cook film. I'm not really looking forward to it, and that was the case with this film. But upon leaving this, I'm actually kind of looking forward to what he does next, because if there's any indication, like I said, his work is on an up and up, so he is getting better and better and better. And the Hexecutioners is decent. It's not great. It's not bad. It's decent. It's watchable, and it's enjoyable. Unlike the Septic Man and the second half of Monster Brawl. Sorry, Monster Brawl fell apart in the climax of all things, and Septic Man was just kind of, it never worked for me. Never worked. But I think that's last year's 31 Days of Horror. Check that out there if you wanna. So yeah, the Hexecutioners. Would I recommend it? It is the kind of film that if you're into ghost stories and it comes up on streaming or something like that, that I would say definitely check it out over a lot of the other direct-to-video releases that are out there. I'm pretty sure this one will be coming out on Anchor Bay, so look for it. And yeah, if it was theatrical, I'd say no. But as a video rental or something like that, it's definitely worth checking out. It's not going to blow you away. It's not going to be something great. It's not going to be something where I'm like, you have to see this. But if you wanted to watch something and you're looking for a ghost story, I would say the Hexecutioners you could do a lot worse. It's, like I said, it's the best film from Jesse that I've ever seen. So, well, he hasn't done a lot, but he's definitely getting better, and he wasn't terrible to begin with. So, who knows? He, 5 movies down the road, we may be going, hey, this guy is starting to put out some really, really good stuff. I honestly think he should break away from Tony. Either that or reel him in. I don't know. Maybe he's hoping to get some kind of involvement on, the Pontypool sequels eventually. I don't know. Tony is a good guy, and unfortunately, he apparently had 2 heart attacks while making this movie. One while he was actually shooting. So, yeah, hopefully Tony manages to stay in good health, and we can get those Pontypool sequels out and done, because I know a lot of people who are looking forward to seeing those. So, yeah, I don't know. The Hexecutioners is the kind of film that it has a lot of feel like 80s ghost stories. There's a lot of nuances and things about it that I really felt kindred to that. Now, it doesn't feel like an 80s movie. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't feel like an 80s movie. It doesn't feel like it's, from that era at all. But just in terms of the story and the way it's, it's told, there are elements from that period in the past that, it kind of harkens to, but it doesn't pay homage to it, but it's just there. It's a feeling I got while I was watching it. And I'm not... Short of the big ones, a lot of the ghost stories from back then were kind of You don't really find them scary anymore. But at the same time, they've kind of got that nostalgia, classic ghost story thing going on. So you still watch them. And the Hexecutioners kind of has that. It's not overly scary. It's not overly dreadful. It's not like gorgeous and smart like The Shining or anything. And it obviously doesn't have the effects of something like Poltergeist. But it's still... There's a lot going on in this film, and thanks to, honestly, the location really, really helps. It's such a great location that they shot in, if it wasn't for all these weird Tony Burgess-esque things going on in the film, it would have been a lot better, and I would, probably give it a recommend to watch. But Tony, man, those tangents, really, it's like... Any movie you leave your head scratching where things just didn't fit is not a good thing. But yeah, take it or leave it. It's up to you. You know what I've just said. If I was gonna rate it, guys, I'd give it, I don't know, 2.5 out of 5, if that's what you're looking for. But it is something that, if you're into ghost stories, I would say, check it out, because you're always looking for new ghost stories and new scares. So, hey, what is newer than the Hexecutioners? All right. More 31 Days of Horror 2015 to come with more Toronto After Dark. So stay tuned. And until next time, take care. Have a good one.